Jiang Chen no longer hesitated and directly opened the territory warehouse. But this also left the entire warehouse empty, meaning all that work had been for nothing. Millions of points were wiped out instantly, a vast resource that countless transmigrators would fight tooth and nail for. The Undead Cataclysm effect is increased to 4 times. Jiang Chen was so excited that his whole body was trembling. He could hardly contain himself and burst into laughter. This is the terrifying value of Undead Cataclysm. Jiang Chen stood there, his heart still pounding wildly. He could get a divine artifact with 30 million points. A unique book page-shaped artifact, fragment, has been discovered. Jiang Chen raised an eyebrow, and after a moment's thought, decisively chose to confirm. In his mind, the Book of Lords was an absolute divine artifact. The Book of Lords is an item deeply bound to the soul. The original rustic brown cover of the Lord's Book was instantly rendered as deep as night. Now these two divine artifacts have completely merged and are no longer separate. Jiang Chen looked at his skill bar. He himself has not yet reached the orange level. Jiang Chen didn't care at all that his points had been completely wiped out. He took out the 2 blue architectural blueprints he had just exchanged. At the scarecrow standing in it, they are essential for upgrading the territory to level 5 stone buildings and even higher level structures. Jiang Chen began to check the requirements for these 2 resource buildings. His warehouse is piled high with stone. Many time travelers are still making a living by selling stones and wood. Jiang Chen opened the enhancement system again and began to enhance the 2 blue quality buildings. The production of blue level buildings is still too slow. The points consumed in upgrading the factory are actually not that many. Jiang Chen finally turned his attention to the most important reward of this Lord assessment. He gently opened the shimmering golden treasure chest before him. The moment the treasure chest was opened, the first thing that catches the eye is a gauntlet with gold. It lay quietly on the left side of the treasure chest. This is currently the highest tier armor available in the territory. Jiang Chen felt the tightness of the armor against his arm. He tried swinging his left arm, and the golden red patterns lit up. Jiang Chen looked down at the armor on his right arm. The only drawback is that it is somewhat heavy. Jiang Chen had previously drunk a life potion that resembled industrial wastewater. He realized that the stone bricks beneath his feet had been smashed to pieces. The spot where his fist struck him had turned into fine powder. In addition, the soul amulet is also a rare and valuable item. The improvement of soul power is extremely slow. It can permanently increase soul power, even if the speed is very slow. Even among gold accessories, it is an extremely rare and top-quality effect. The importance of the soul is self-evident. It is not only directly linked to mana. Unfortunately, he didn't have many points left. Not enough to upgrade the soul amulet to gold. Otherwise, he would emphasize everything he said. The most useful thing for Jiang Chen in this treasure chest is the Dark Altar. Jiang Chen looked down on the mere enhanced versions of skeletons. Jiang Chen now has the ability to summon large numbers of cannon fodder troops. The altar was made entirely of black rock. The black pool at its top was constantly bubbling. The skulls on the 8 stone pillars had eyes that gleamed with an eerie green light. It seems that recruiting skeletons is not as simple as it seems. It is still not as good as gargoyles of the same level. The Dark Altar was strengthened for upgrading it to orange level. The recruitment limit has been adjusted to 5. This is actually a unit that can communicate with other units. Gargoyles, on the other hand, are almost exclusively used for fighting and patrolling. The degree of reduction is related to the target's original willpower and soul strength. The degree of confusion is related to the target's original willpower and soul strength. These 3 skills are practically made for the battlefield. The Dark Priest stood behind the Undead Legion. Dark Priests are the core unit of the Undead Legion. He looked at the 5 elite Dark Priests before him. The number of Dark Priests had been replenished to a full 100. Jiang Chen has to hunt real animals to obtain flesh and blood resources. Dark Priest's loyalty has increased by 5 points, currently at 85. These Dark Priests also have their own needs. Their loyalty increases when their needs are met. However, the initial form already has 80 loyalty, which is enough. Jiang Chen turned his gaze to the Stonewing Church next to him. Soul crystals are a core resource, essential for recruiting all types of troops. An absurd thought uncontrollably entered Jiang Chen's mind. He was no longer the ordinary transmigrator who had just arrived. It had to be resolutely eliminated from the route. The enemies of time travelers are never each other, but the native forces on this continent. Jiang Chen understood the Dali principles reasoning, but reality was far more harsh. The word enjoyment is simply out of the question. As for food, it was a source of pain for Jiang Chen. They either said they didn't have enough alchemical materials. The most miserable transmigrator's soul has already embarked on a journey to transmigrate again. He slept the most soundly he had since transmigrating. Green-level equipment blueprints are not uncommon in the city's workshops and shops. Local artisans are not incapable of manufacturing green equipment. The biggest challenges for ordinary craftsmen in manufacturing green equipment are efficiency. Often, the input and return are not necessarily equal. The time required is often measured in days. In comparison, time travelers have a significant advantage in this regard. Such efficiency would make even capitalists weep with envy. Such a large number is enough to arm an army of several thousand people. A massive amount of weapons and equipment were all stored in his spatial ring. This ring has a capacity far exceeding what most people can imagine. It still seems to have plenty of room. In the harsh land of the far north, weapons are always the most readily available currency. The remaining 100 gargoyles were ordered to continuously circle and scout over the territory. The alchemist, Sisca, made it clear that she would not be traveling with them. The so-called critical period for the puppet was most likely just an excuse. Sisca's alchemy was crucial to the territory. She didn't have to go out if she didn't want to. 1,000 skeleton soldiers stood in formation. Jiang Chen was also considering whether he should buy a carriage. Jiang Chen's undead army had been to Blackrock's city once before. This undead lord is a very strange young man. He's not here to wage war, but to do business. This undead lord is a very strange young man. This distance is very safe. Even elite orc archers cannot shoot from this distance. When traveling, it is an ironclad rule not to flaunt one's wealth. Spatial rings are common, but spatial equipment with an astonishing capacity like Jiang Chen's is rare. It's not uncommon for nobles to have 1 or 2 spatial devices. It is always better to be cautious. The heavy gates of Blackrock City slowly opened. When he saw Jiang Chen from afar, he revealed a hearty smile. He felt a hard and smooth object through the mage's robe. Jiang Chen smiled slightly and slowly rolled up the sleeves of his wide mage robe. The armor was exquisitely crafted with intricate patterns. The definition of war weapons is that they are bulky, crude, and simple. The advantages of standard weapons are that they are easy to maintain, durable, and efficient. They would never offend their biggest weapons supplier on the surface. And this is exactly the effect Jiang Chen wanted to achieve. People who are only half-baked are often easier to fool than complete idiots. He didn't remember the surname Jiang Chen had made up at all. He walked side by side with Jiang Chen into Blackrock City. Jiang Chen and York walked side by side on the wide main street. It would be enough to elevate the city's defensive capabilities to a new level, a feat that no ordinary small force could match. It would only be a matter of time before Blackrock City dominated the surrounding area. Nowadays, 500 light crossbows are equipped with only 5,000 arrows, averaging only 10 arrows per crossbow. It would be difficult to sustain even a fierce skirmish. It seems that the 3 laws are of such high value in any world. York said no more, and warmly led Jiang Chen into the city lord's mansion. The interior furnishings were rough yet practical. It is normal for them to be slightly more expensive than one-handed swords. Jiang Chen still felt somewhat dissatisfied with the price. York's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and he immediately began to calculate in his mind. Moreover, the number of goods the Goblin Merchant Guild delivers each week is limited. After some negotiation, the final transaction plan was finalized. It would be a shame to throw it away. The undead territory is now devoid of life. Jiang Chen nodded in agreement and followed little York out of the city lord's mansion. The slave trade was one of the most popular trades in orc territory. This idea was exactly what Sisca had specifically reminded Jiang Chen of before. Jiang Chen's side is even more efficient. Jiang Chen would never do something like torture and kill slaves. Young York nodded immediately upon hearing this. The shop's exterior walls were made of rough black stone. Jiang Chen looked up and saw a fat orc walking quickly towards him. The most direct manifestation of wealth is wearing gold and silver jewelry. Kessie immediately understood, winked at little York, and returned a knowing look. The air was so murky it was almost solidified. It had been tortured to the point of complete resignation. This group of slaves was clearly different from the former. They had wounds of varying depths on their bodies. It stared intently at Jiang Chen and the others. Jiang Chen glanced at it but remained silent. He directly bought 10 blank slave contracts with 200 gold coins, commonly used in mainland China. The slave traders were overjoyed and wanted to continue selling the orc slaves in the cages. Jiang Chen came mainly to purchase goods. Buying one good-looking chef would be enough. Now that he has Amy, he doesn't need any extra slaves for the time being. Jiang Chen was sent back by the slave traders. He was still reluctant to part with this big customer. Jiang Chen stopped and looked at the cat-like figure beside him, who was still trembling slightly. Jiang Chen hadn't expected to buy a slave who could read and write. The vast majority of orcs are actually pedophiles. They have difficulty even counting their own fingers. Arithmetic skills up to 100 are considered top-notch among orcs. Amy is clearly very young, and obviously has a lot of potential. He has never liked empty rules. He values actual control more than verbal hierarchies. However, due respect should still be shown, and compliance testing is also a very important part. The owner who bought her doesn't seem like he'll mistreat her. The wooden door opened, and the aroma of ale and roasted meat wafted out. Jiang Chen ordered a table full of food. Having been hungry for 3 whole days, Amy was initially hesitant to move. Jiang Chen looked at the numbers flashing on the panel and chuckled to himself. A little food was all she needed. A figure completely shrouded in black robes stood silently. His vertical pupils, hidden in the shadows, were fixed on the direction Jiang Chen had left. Amy's pupils suddenly contracted, and the fur on her body instantly stood on end. This was the first time in her life she had seen the undead. The guards outside Anjvir or even thousands of skeletons. As Su, the pale skeleton stood densely packed on the open ground. The fur on its tail stood on end. It had clearly activated its Spinosaurus form. The kitten was terrified the whole way on the cart. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became. Her master was going to wash her clean and then cook her and eat her. She never expected that the owner who bought her would want to eat her. Jiang Chen stared speechlessly at the terrified cat-like figure before him. Loyalty has plummeted for the second time. The second time was because of a pot of hot water. This little guy is not only timid, but also exceptionally good at imagining things. Jiang Chen was amused by her and had no choice but to explain. Jiang Chen consciously turned away, leaving her enough privacy. The heavy ore was transported to the steel-making furnace and piled into neat little hills. Weapons, armor, and medicines. This came the most sought-after hard currency. Turning around, Jen was slightly taken aback. A white shirt that was clearly a size too big, and a pair of loose shorts. The cuffs were rolled up several times. It turned out to be a calico kitten. The cat's ears on its head are black. The tail behind it is also a 3-color gradient. The cat's paws were black and white. What Jiang Chen valued most about Amy was her big, bright, and clear eyes. She was afraid of overstepping her bounds, afraid of violating her master's rules, and even more afraid of being blamed. She was afraid of overstepping her bounds. Such immense trust left Amy's eyes wide with surprise and delight, and her mood improved considerably. But the master in front of her had given her such a great deal of freedom. However, her posture was still very restrained. She only dared to sit on 1/3 of the chair. As a slave, Amy knew that the servants were not allowed to sit at the table and eat with their masters. The servants are only allowed to clean up the leftovers after the master has finished eating. Jiang Chen's voice was deep and had a strange soothing quality. This was the first time she had a full meal since she was captured. Of course, even in the past, Amy could hardly eat meat to her heart's content. She could only fill her stomach with black bread and wild vegetables in the village. Occasional crow figures standing in it. Sisca, she would eat a piece of meat which she would save for her younger brother. She quickly raised her hand to wipe it away, afraid that Jiang Chen would see it. Jiang Chen wasn't unaware of what was happening. She got up and began clearing the table. Jiang Chen gently tapped the table and said. Amy stopped wiping the table abruptly, almost unable to believe what she had just heard. In winter, several people would wrap themselves in quilts and huddle together for warmth. She even felt that being bought by her owner was an incredibly lucky thing. Pushing open the door, the space inside is not large, but it is clean and tidy. The room was sufficient for her use for the time being. The doll was covered in blood and was holding a bloody arm in its hand. The way her eyes were scrutinizing Amy made Amy's recently calmed down mood instantly become uneasy again. She was still looking Amy up and down. It turned out that Jiang Chen bought it as a toy to vent his desires. She turned to return to the alchemy lab to continue creating her puppet dolls. He is essentially a young human male dominated by hormones. She is a hero of the territory and a highly learned alchemist. Clearly, the title a highly learned alchemist had put Sisca in a very good mood. Jiang Chen turned to look at Sisca and said. Sisca turned around. He already understood what Jiang Chen meant. Sisca began to think about it seriously. Jiang Chen deliberately added the word reasonable, because he was afraid that Sisca. Jiang Chen raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised. Loyalty increased by 3 points at once, which is truly a rare sight. However, increased loyalty is generally a good thing. She didn't know that Sisca was an orange hero. She believed she had understood Jiang Chen's meaning. The body of a carbon-based life form is nothing more than a fragile organism. Abandoning the physical body and ascending mechanically, this is the ultimate path of life's evolution. She even somewhat looked forward to the day when Amy would be ruined. She will have to devote herself to the great cause of mechanical ascension. Jiang Chen had not yet realized that Sisca's views on good and evil. Under her influence, it was simply impossible for Sisca to develop a normal world view. The abilities more powerful have been quietly added. Jiang Chen noticed Sisca's actions and felt a little strange. He had just seen a hint of expectation. Jiang Chen was planning to inspect the territory, to see if there was anything lacking. He raised his hand to touch the Book of Lords, and selected Agree. Jiang Chen smiled and stepped forward, bending down to give Demo a warm hug. This situation would be even more plausible. Before he could finish speaking, Demo's smile suddenly froze. After the initial shock, Demo's face was instantly replaced by ecstatic joy. The promotion ladder that Demo has always dreamed of. He turned around to get to the shopping list, his steps lighter than usual. He specifically instructed his uncle that this territory was rich in gold coins. The trading network upon which the Goblin Merchants Guild depends for survival would collapse. The Goblin Merchant Guild would not have grown to its current size. The catalog is filled with a dazzling array of items. Furthermore, rare materials of purple quality, such as soul crystals and immortal traces, have appeared. Chen could guess that this was definitely a high-level building material for the undead faction. It is clearly intended to suppress the development of other territories. They have a considerable amount of valuable goods. He had already made a high estimate of Jiang Chen's wealth. After all, 10,000 gold consits are enough to build a small army. Jiang Chen seemed to sense Demo's nervousness. It was as if a thunderclap had exploded in Demo's ears. A goblin who had seen his share of big events. He had seen many domineering lords in his life. He would have almost rushed over to give Jiang Chen a warm hug. In his eyes, Jiang Chen was practically Demo's second father, a father figure to him. Amy responded and left, her small figure disappearing behind the door of the Lord's Hall. The box piled high with gold coins was indeed a heavy burden for Amy. Jiang Chen raised his hand and opened one of the wooden boxes first. Those were a full 10,000 gleaming gold coins. The prop appeared to be made of brass or gold. A striking green light appeared on the prop. Nowadays, the transaction amount of territory is often tens of thousands. Incidentally, this thing has more functions than that. Daimo's happiness at this moment was definitely not feigned. He will have his own trading area and will no longer have to travel around. But ever since he met Jiang Chen, his ambition has begun to swell wildly. The ultimate goal is to advance to the position of vice president of the Goblin branch. He has already gained such a large amount of gold coins from just 2 transactions. Jiang Chen's signature piece suddenly turned icy cold, and his aura instantly darkened. There is also the unique deterrent power of goblins. He had quite a few hidden defensive items in his pocket. Those items were specially made for salesmen by the Goblin Merchant Guild. They were enough to give him a fighting chance against ordinary soldiers. This is also the Chamber of Commerce's protection for goblin salesmen. No matter how influential the Chamber of Commerce is, a salesperson's ability to protect themselves is directly related to the security of the transaction. Those who are unaware of the influence of goblin merchants are just third-rate individuals. The goblin's bottom line is always very flexible. Moreover, the Goblin Guild is in the right. These are the true elite of the territory. Jiang Chen raised an eyebrow and then selected accept. Since his friend had helped him, he couldn't very well refuse Daimo's request. Human relationships are something that are built up gradually, through give and take. Jiang Chen was surprised to find that these goblin rippers were actually all 9th-tier berserkers. This is the source of the goblin salesman's confidence, seemingly insignificant, yet possessing deadly power. Jiang Chen knew that Demo was just afraid that if his big spending client suddenly passed away, it would cut off his future performances and dividends. The attacker was actually just one person, but Jiang Chen was still not worried that she could cause any trouble. His territory was no longer what it was when it was first established. The number of the most basic, low-leveled skeleton soldiers alone had exceeded 5,000. The distance was quite far, so Jiang Chen couldn't see very clearly. The opponent should be weaker than the orc hero who appeared in the Lord's assessment. The elite dark priests have now arrived at the rear of the battlefield. These dark priests are far inferior to Catman and Vader. They would hardly cause any substantial weakening. But there were just too many dark priests. Ben finally managed to find out about his sister who had been kidnapped in Blackrock City. Her sister was bought on the spot by a mysterious buyer. Luo Jia saw that the other party seemed to be accompanied by a master. The mountains and fields are filled with walking skeletons and swirling gargoyles. It is not a place where the living should set foot. The dead are most sensitive to the presence of the living. Luo Jia thought these curses were just harmless harassment. She clearly felt her limbs becoming heavier and heavier. This kick was extremely powerful, clearly indicating it wasn't just an ordinary skeleton soldier. Luo Jia had never heard of the fate of falling into the hands of the undead. She struggled desperately with all her might. She turned around at that moment and saw the figure that had just attacked her. It was a tall skeleton wearing golden armor. The skeleton archer would have turned her into a pincushion long ago. Jiang Chen stood in front of Luo Jia, his gaze sweeping over her, without making a sound before landing on her feet. Jiang Chen stood in front of Luo Jia. Judging from the exposed skin, Luo Jia has normal feet, not furry, paw-pad-covered paws like Amy's. Amy herself said it was fine, so the matter was temporarily put on hold. Luo Jia's cat ears are easy to miss. For some reason, Jiang Chen suddenly felt somewhat disappointed. The weakening curse left by the dark priest had not completely dissipated. His strength had only recovered to less than 50%. At this point, a rebellion would be impossible. The moment her fist struck Jiang Chen's nose, the hero contract would activate, instantly neutralizing all her resistance. She raised her head, her amber cat eyes narrowed, and looked at Jiang Chen with ill intent. These words were like an ice needle, instantly piercing Luo Jia's most vulnerable spot. Only when Jiang Chen returned safely did her heart finally settle down. It was taken care of in the most meticulous way. Luo Jia might have even considered exposing Jiang Chen. She was still a child and didn't understand these things that only adults knew. Even when Amy was taking a shower, he deliberately left to avoid suspicion. Jiang Chen had even prepared his lines of advice. Ultimately, winning over heroes requires genuine sincerity. Loyalty gained through threats and manipulation is ultimately fragile. Secondly, Amy's loyalty level had already reached 85 points, making her completely devoted to him. He turned around and ordered the patrolling skeleton soldiers and gargoyles to strengthen their vigilance. On the desk, various props and blueprints are neatly arranged. The most eye-catching items were 2 skill upgrade scrolls that shimmered with a dazzling glow. One is blue, and the other is purple. The significance of meditation is not just to accelerate the recovery of magic power. He has never slacked off for a moment. The purple rank is a crucial dividing line. Suppressing his excitement, Jiang Chen continued to examine his next fine purple architectural blueprints. The materials required for this purple building are extremely large, but not particularly rare. The fence was made of dark wood. The area was filled with a strong aura of death. It turned out to be an undead mount-type unit. These horses were upright and muscular, with strong and powerful limbs. The only strange thing was that their next attacks were empty. The headless horse is a formidable fighter. They are tireless and fearless of pain. Jiang Chen's forces do not yet have a fully developed cavalry unit. The headless horse is more than 10 times faster than a 2-legged skeleton. Withdrawing his gaze, Jiang Chen turned and walked into the workshop area. He opened a page of the Lord's book, which displayed a special blueprint. A line of small print caught his eye, causing his brows, which had just relaxed, to furrow tightly again. The power of their curses and weakening spells would be greatly enhanced. However, the materials needed to make this withered wooden staff were a real problem for him. Ashstone is sold by the Goblin Merchant Guild for 10 gold coins per stone. The Dark Priest's performance is definitely worthy of the staff. The Dark Priest can leave behind negative effects that are difficult to remove. Jiang Chen got up early and finished washing up just as dawn was breaking. they found that their maid and the newly joined hero were all still in bed. A moment later, the door was suddenly pulled open. Behind Amy followed a disheveled, sleepy-eyed figure. It was Luo Jia. The girl had similar appearance to Amy, but with more wildness and arrogance. At this moment, she was staring at Jiang Chen with an unfriendly expression. She was only wrapped in a thick blanket. He had already installed more than a dozen sunstones in the hall. He didn't have to worry about Luo Jia getting cold. Luo Jia is so slovenly. She completely treats this place like her own home. Amy lowered her head, her long eyelashes trembling, which was considered an admission. She has to learn alchemy from Sisca today. She might even be scolded by Sisca. He could still use those words to scare the cat-eared girl in front of him. Jiang Chen's tone became more serious, but seeing Amy's face, instantly turned frightened. He softened his tone, again. Amy's loyalty has increased by 3 points, currently at 88. He hadn't expected that a simple act of affection could increase loyalty. Her hair was still messy, and she looked sleepy. Jiang Chen became a slave owner without any psychological hindrance, and began to scold Luo Jia. He didn't mind that Luo Jia had her own little quirks. She had to know that in this territory. Luo Jia turned to look at Amy sitting at the dining table. The cat-eared girl was obediently holding a fork and gave her a helpless smile. Reluctantly, he turned around fond and headed towards the washroom. The two of them were always curious about the 2 wooden sticks in Jiang Chen's hands. But when it was their turn to try it themselves, they kept slipping off. She wanted to tell Jiang Chen that the goal had been achieved. This was the first time he had seen Sisca rushing to his door during a meal. His tone was urgent, and he was already walking towards the door. The figure was at least 2 meters tall. He would have suspected that it was Gevak, who had been reborn. The suture marks of the wound could be vaguely seen. They don't even have the most basic inherent skills. This is a core advantage that ordinary troops can never possess. A dazzling light flashed, and 10,000 points were instantly consumed. The puppet, which was originally of blue grade, was actually upgraded to purple. He was able to enhance a powerful combat unit, comparable to a hero. Such an alchemical golem would probably collapse completely after only a couple of rounds of fighting. The 7th-tier skeleton soldiers, recruited, are still skeleton soldiers. Their combat power is even inferior to the gargoyles, recruited by the purple buildings. Jiang Chen was slightly disappointed, but this was a happy kind of trouble. It cannot accommodate undead heroes who have developed their own consciousness. But if the alchemical golem could be stored in a spatial ring, everything would be different. The puppet's combat strength is comparable to that of a hero. It is not bound by the hero's consciousness and will absolutely obey his commands. They would find a large number of high-level alchemical puppets appearing around him. Jiang Chen watched the puppet's fluid movements and was very satisfied. She was staring intently at the berserk puppet, her expression so grave as if she had seen something disgusting. It was filled with a gnashing hatred. Jiang Chen was pulled so hard by her that he stumbled. Luo Jia's voice was full of excitement. Jiang Chen looked her up and down. However, on the battlefield such attire is too thin and offers no protection whatsoever. It was icy cold to the touch. She could feel the defensive strength of the armor. She silently swallowed back a complaint that was on the tip of her tongue. Her fists were her most reliable companions. Jiang Chen didn't say much, but he already had a plan in mind. Jiang Chen turned to look at Sisca. Sisca's gaze swept over Amy, who was standing in the corner. The cat girl was looking around with curious eyes, seemingly unharmed. It seemed that the master she had recognized wasn't so great after all. It seems all that effort was wasted. Jiang Chen was unaware of Sisca's grumbling. However, Jiang Chen was riding a headless horse at the moment. The headless horse would gallop in that direction, without any operation. This was Luo Jia's first time riding a headless horse. She seemed to be in a good mood. Luo Jia's direction was clearly biased towards the south. Jiang Chen suspected that they had already passed Blackstone City. This made Jiang Chen wonder if Luo Jia had remembered the wrong way. What? This was clearly beyond the range of the Ash Tower's influence. He immediately ordered the army to halt its advance. They were now on the edge of the ice field. In the distance, a large tribe was being slaughtered. The victims were orcs, and the killers were also orcs. The headless horse would not make any move. His voice was calm, yet carried an undeniable power. He didn't have any ambition to change the world. The Sorks were quick and coordinated, clearly an organized raiding party. The Berserker tribe had done many heinous things in the past. She is powerless to resist other people's care and concern. Jiang Chen opened the Book of Lords. 100 dark priests dressed in black robes suddenly appeared. The undead have always been synonymous with evil. The orcs currently raiding were not a regular army. The appearance of the undead was like a boulder thrown into a lake. Jiang Chen stood on high ground, taking in the entire scene. A faint smile appeared on his lips, and he was secretly pleased. The army under its command has finally grown to a certain size. No longer the ragtag army that could barely defend itself. The orcs were already in chaos, fighting individually, and unable to mount an effective resistance. His armor was covered in blood, and he looked like an orc hero. He was smaller than Guak, and less imposing. Luo Jia felt an itch to rush forward. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Chen released the alchemical puppet from his spatial ring. An orange-tier war machine is not someone a lowly hero like him can easily mess with. She had originally wanted to rush in and wreak havoc. It would be strange if she was in a good mood. By this time, the orc army was already in complete disarray. The remaining orcs had no will to resist and fled in all directions. Little did they know the elite gargoyles in the sky had already laid a trap. This is the advantage of undead warriors. No matter how brave the orcs are, the undead have no emotions or fear. They simply execute orders strictly until the enemy is completely annihilated. Vega stood in the ranks of skeleton soldiers, calmly directing them to clean up the battlefield. The skeleton soldiers finished off the orcs, who were not yet completely dead. They are cruel by nature and agile. Jiang Chen didn't believe they were just testing by chance. Luke's eyes narrowed sharply, and his gaze toward Roja was filled with anger. The hero altar is the core of affection. Once the altar is destroyed, the bound hero will lose the chance to be resurrected. However, this does not mean that heroes are absolutely invincible. Jiang Chen turned his gaze to Luo Jia, his eyes questioning. He overheard the news that the main force of the Berserker tribe had been wiped out. Jiang Chen nodded and slowly stood up. He raised his right hand, revealing the royal beast armor, inlaid with golden patterns. Once Luke is killed, the Iron Fist tribe will know that the undead were behind it. The two forces are currently at odds. Jiang Chen has no need to jump out and become a target to attract hatred. He wiped the blood off his arm guard and said calmly. The gargoyles in the sky returned one after another. Everyone from the original Berserker tribe was executed. Jiang Chen nodded and ordered, "Take all the spoils and return to the territory. They must continuously collect flesh and bone resources. This is an essential path for the undead forces." All the valuable items had already been cleared out and placed in Jiang Chen's spatial ring. The return journey was much slower than the way there. The Berserker tribe had indeed amassed its wealth through plunder. Sisca looked the unconscious orc up and down, a hint of disgust flashing in her eyes. A look of terror immediately appeared on his face. Jiang Chen had Vega pack them all up. It has to be said that robbing is indeed the fastest way to make money. This time, the harvest was converted into a staggering 120,000 universal gold coins. It had to sell some of its resources in the Black Rock City market. This doesn't mean that Black Rock City is less wealthy than the Berserker camp. The text on the public channel was scrolling by, all of it mockery and disdain. Moreover, the rewards for the Lord's assessment are extremely tempting. But all of this has nothing to do with Jiang Chen now. Jiang Chen's territory has long surpassed the understanding of all lords. The resource output brought by orange-level buildings is something no one dares to imagine. The arrogance in his tone was impossible to hide. Faced with the temptation of territory development, soul crystals are nothing more than Afi's external things. Jiang Chen looked at the public channel again. The discussion about Zhao Qixi's selling stone bricks was getting more and more heated. Most of the independent lords were just watching the show. He has decided to buy in large quantities, so everyone can rest assured. The channel was silent for a few seconds after the message was posted. Of course, this possibility is very small. It is almost impossible for anyone to do something like Zhao Qi. Xia Yulan realized that she seemed to have inadvertently discovered the truth. Jiang Chen's reputation is now at its peak. Among the transmigrators, he is undoubtedly a leading figure and a synonym for conscience. Jiang Chen has certainly not been the only one to have contacted outside forces. No one has come forward to expose his deception. Jiang Chen opened up a large portion of his goods to her. She could buy some weapons that were by some that not sold publicly on the market through rare resources. The trust between her and Jiang Chen was hard won. Jiang Chen offered a price that was dirt cheap. Jiang Chen's purpose in doing this was not just to make money. Jiang Chen's shop is always the first place that comes to mind. It wasn't because his goods were the cheapest. These corpses are mostly orcs defeated in previous battles. In the territory's warehouse, Luo Jia was squatting among the spoils, busily sorting them. This leopard-like cat seems to have an almost obsessive greed for gold. Shibis would occasionally let out an excited growl when she discovered rare materials. Something she resists so strongly must have crossed her bottom line. Her little hands were firmly locked in his palm. Jiang Chen's lips twitched. She had underestimated Sisca's passion for alchemy. It would absolutely ruin his joy of petting his cat. She had no understanding of human relationships or social interactions. He would feel uncomfortable petting the cat in the future. He had prepared the relevant materials long ago. He just hadn't had time to find the time. Jiang Chen was not in a hurry. The moment the treasure chest was opened, a dazzling light burst forth from it. The rewards from this treasure chest were very generous. Luke has already been handed over to Sisca. A living hero has the potential to advance and is enhanced by various skills. There was no need to confirm anymore. He knew Luke was completely beyond saving. This guy eventually became Sisca's alchemical experiment subject. Jiang Chen continued to nutcheck the rewards from the silver treasure chest. The Shadow Strike is a purple quality dagger with a handguard around the hilt. It has level 4 base damage, level 4 armor penetration, and level 4 sharpness. There are no fancy special effects, only extreme attacks. For warriors who rely on attack speed, this weapon is an absolute dream come true. Jiang Chen spent the points he had to upgrade Shadowthorn to orange quality. The light from the shadow spikes instantly became even darker and sharper, radiating a chilling aura. Then he called over Roja, who was sorting through the spoils. Luo Jia was squatting in the pile of spoils. They could be used for both assassination and striking. Luo Jia's voice was filled with disbelief. For a moment she was dazed and even at a loss. Luo Jia turned and ran away like a startled rabbit. His mind was completely focused on making money. The value of this scroll is self-evident. This demonstrates just how invaluable orange-tier heroes are. Before the eerie purple glow of the portal had completely dissipated, a hunched yet upright figure slowly stepped out from within. Clad in a black robe, he was completely enveloped in an aura of death and magical energy. It was the body of a lich. A ghostly blue flame of the soul was fixed intently on the human before him. Jiang Chen had anticipated that the troops summoned by the scroll were not absolutely loyal. Jiang Chen was somewhat unsure how to evaluate the newly summoned hero. Just looking at these skill names, Jiang Chen felt his eyes dazzled by the golden light. They are purple buildings that he is currently fully capable of building. Grous nodded slightly, his withered skull making a gesture of respect. It was merely out of the rituals of the dead. Jiang Chen was not surprised that Grous could see through his undead faction at a glance. Lich Grous has joined the territory, currently with a loyalty level of 60%. When Luo Jia first joined the territory, her favorability rating was just over 30. It is believed that after observing his own territory, Grous will change his mind. Many people had told him that he was different from other lords, but the results were almost always the same. A series of eerie buildings are scattered around. Jiang Chen chuckled inwardly. He had been waiting for Grous to raise this question. The Lich had lived for so long and had never seen such a bizarre situation. Lich Grous's loyalty has increased by 10 points, currently at 70%. Jiang Chen was not surprised by the things that could happen in this world. However, the so-called gods are most likely just extremely powerful beings, heroes above the red level. Jiang Chen, a staunch materialist, could not possibly have any reverence for something like God. However, he wouldn't mind making offerings to the god of the dead if it were useful. It was not far from the main city. Jiang Chen nodded, seemingly understanding but not quite. In order to win over this powerful lich, building a temple of the dead is imperative. He opened the Book of Lords in his hand. The walls of the Temple of Death are carved with hideous skull reliefs. The temple's interior space is not spacious. Lich Grous's loyalty is increased by 10 points, currently at 80%. He slowly walked into the Temple of the Dead. He walked to the base of the stone statue. Jiang Chen immediately felt that even without Grous, the territory finally has the ability to produce its own. He could not revere gods, but he had to remain vigilant. The temple's dome was covered with black necromantic runes. The floor was paved with bone bricks that gleamed coldly. Those models were recruitment buildings for all undead's factions within their own territory. It's just that its size has been shrunk by dozens of times, like a miniature model. Jiang Chen understood what Grous meant. It was simply about strengthening the troop types. One is a fundamental improvement, and the other is a targeted boost to combat power. Jiang Chen was now in a bit of a predicament. Even the legitimate forces of the undead faction would never openly slaughter their own heroes, stored Feijians. Then the only option left is to hunt down other heroes. He's currently being turned into an alchemical sub in the alchemy lab. He took the lead and walked towards the alchemy laboratory. The two walked and talked, from the mysteries of necromancy to the wonders of alchemy. He might be able to improve his necromancy level without relying on enhancement scrolls. The door to the alchemy laboratory was ancient and heavy. The door was carefully opened a crack. It was Amy, Jiang Chen's personal maid, and also an alchemy apprentice. Her white maid's apron was soaked with dark red blood. Jiang Chen has always been extremely patient with capable people. She looked up and met the gaze of Grous. In the end, it was Grous who broke the silence first. Jiang Chen felt a warmth in his heart. His gaze towards Sisca became much more relaxed. Their conversation was a discussion of knowledge. Jiang Chen stood aside, unable to get a word in edgewise, and could only watch silently. Amy was completely bewildered, as if she were listening to gibberish. It must have been tough for her to have a teacher like Sisca. Jiang Chen looked at Grous beside him and couldn't help but ask. Jiang Chen felt a deep sense of respect. The Lich's pursuit of knowledge was indeed well-deserved. Sisca's importance to the territory is self-evident. Judging from Grous's behavior, he is most likely a complete fanatic of the god of death. Moreover, Grous's loyalty has not changed at all, so he probably genuinely believes that. He stood at the temple entrance and couldn't help but begin to reflect. The Book of Lords issued a crisp notification sound. The main city upgrade is complete. The buildings of the undead faction are mostly black and gloomy. Jiang Chen quickly browsed the upgraded attributes. Jiang Chen felt a headache coming on again. The problem is that his reserves of rare resources are almost depleted. It would take at least 20 days to collect all the ash stones and death gems. Jiang Chen was naturally unwilling to wait for such a long time. Jiang Chen was slightly taken aback, then realized what he had almost forgotten about the goblin. The other party is no longer a salesperson. It seems that his promotion is going even more smoothly than expected. He was covered with all sorts of glittering gold ornaments. He looked up at Demo and asked, "The upgraded teleportation array has more stable energy. Elves, dwarves, orcs, humans, and even the undead are not avoided." The Goblin Merchant Guild's previous 7-day trading sessions were more like a screening mechanism. Screens those who are qualified enough to participate in the Avalon trade. No sooner had he finished speaking than Demo snatched the scroll from Jiang Zhen's hand. He could tell that Demo didn't actually know what was so magical about it. He was simply proud to be a member of the Goblin Merchant Guild. However, he didn't expose it. After all, Demo had indeed done him a great favor. He first found Vega and entrusted him with the defense and daily affairs of the territory. He could go to Sisca or Grous. They'll come over and act cute when there are benefits. Jiang Chen gained some understanding of nobles from the books of the Klenold family. In most cases, a noble's miss is more important than his actual strength. He also knew that face was never something for himself to see. He may be looked down upon by some forces. Daimo had been waiting there for a long time. The pale blue light of the teleportation array instantly became dazzling, enveloping the three of them. The surrounding scenery began to distort and blur. He almost thought he had traveled back to a modern. The street in front of us is wide and flat. The streets are lined with multi-story, Western-style buildings. The walls of the Western-style building are covered with colorful signs, but there is usually a symbol next to it, indicating what the store's main business is. It was lively and bustling, yet orderly, and without a trace of chaos. An elf dressed in a magnificent green robe was talking to a burly dwarf. Orc tribes are scattered throughout the continent. Therefore, many people are willing to buy raw materials from orcs. This place has broken down all racial barriers. No wonder it has become the most prosperous commercial city on the entire continent. The person who came up with this idea must be a genius. It must be said that the Goblin Merchant Guild's methods are indeed ingenious. Luo Jia remained as cold and aloof as she warily scanned the surrounding crowd. She was still subconsciously on guard because she was used to being on the streets. They arrived at a huge shop in the center of the block. This shop was taller and more imposing than the other shops around it. The facade was made of pure gold and inlaid with colorful gemstones. Jiang Chen looked at the impressive shop and couldn't help but smile. The conversation inside the shop stopped instantly, and everyone's eyes were drawn to the entrance. Jiang Chen and Luo Jia stood aside, quietly watching them argue. It's clear that Demo and the syndicate actually have a good relationship. This distinguished guest was still beside him. To goblins, whoever has money is king. He took a closer look, and his expression gradually became strange, even turning somewhat gloomy. The scrolls contained a wide variety of goods, but most of them were flashy and impractical. Jiang Chen looked at the goods and was speechless. He suppressed the urge to smash the scroll in Syndicate's face and said calmly. He was clearly implying the special effects of the seal potion. This scroll is much thicker and heavier than the previous one. His gaze was instantly drawn to the contents of the scroll. He realized that he was still a poor man whose family was almost starving. Jiang Chen nodded, solemnly closed the scroll, and returned it to the syndicate. This wasn't a particularly clever method, but it was exceptionally effective. Syndicate turned around and went back behind the counter, took out the third scroll, and handed it to Jiang Chen. This scroll is more ordinary than the previous two. The goods on it are more in line with Jiang Chen's current needs. This time the catalog is much more normal. It seems the Goblin Merchant Guild's reputation is indeed higher than he imagined. He thought for a moment and asked again. Reputation is of paramount importance in any world. Moreover, his current strength is not strong enough. He only has Sisca and Grous as his orange heroes. It is impossible for him to send them to Avalon to guard the territory. As for the price, being 30% lower than the market price, Jiang Chen could accept it. It could slightly boost the morale of his soldiers. This thing was almost useless and had been gathering dust in his spatial ring. A moment later, he suddenly opened his eyes, a look of shock on his face. Orange-level items, while not the most top-tier, are extremely rare. They are highly valuable for both uses collection. Daimo's ears twitched, and he instantly became excited upon hearing the words Orange Amulet. He also knew that the Goblins' Merchants Association had clear rules. This thing was of no use to him at all. The undead have no concept of morale. He still didn't expect that an orange amulet could sell for such a price. And this is just the value of an ordinary orange item. Moreover, if converted into lower-level resources, the productivity of the development would probably be even higher. In an instant, Jiang Chen seemed to see a sea of golden coins rushing towards him. Jiang Chen's perspective was ultimately limited by that of a transmigrator. Generally speaking, even among powerful and well-established factions, orange-tier items are few and far between. Even some factions' orange-tier heroes may not necessarily have several orange-tier weapons. Don't assume that the Goblin Merchant Guild are truly amicable and profitable businessmen. The goblins had already evolved power armor. The strength of the goblins is self-evident. There has never been any warmth in the Chaos Continent. He had only handled a handful of transactions worth millions. This orange amulet is not only of superior quality, but also in perfect condition. The syndicate had found the perfect excuse for him. His eyes as shrewd as a fox that had stolen honey. This money-making speed is even faster than highway robbery. This blueprint is only purple in level. Jiang Chen knew very well that the value of this drawing was absolutely worth his offer. The nobles of humanity are notorious for being foolish, rich, and extravagant. He was used to the extravagant spending of the nobles. Goblin merchants are inherently opportunistic and profit-driven. Whether or not there were any so-called sacred objects in prehistoric times is not important. The goblins could tell the story so vividly that it would be completely believable. Those flashy but impractical things are meaningless to him. Jiang Chen's lips curled into a barely perceptible smile as he said calmly. He finally understood how Daimo had felt back then. The Goblin Merchant Guild's resources still left him feeling overwhelmed. The Goblin Merchant Guild didn't have enough stock on hand. This amount is enough for him to squander for a while. Both of these resources are essential in the undead territory. Jiang Chen bought all the materials at once. What Jiang Chen cared about even more was the soul crystal. Whether it's hero training or recruiting troops, soul crystals are indispensable. Even the Goblin Merchant Guild has a very limited inventory. Jiang Chen ordered 10,000 units of soul crystals at once. The Goblin Gold coin shop was buzzing with activity. Jiang Chen stood aside and roughly calculated it. These gold cards are made using a special process by the Goblin Merchant Guild. They are hard and have the guild's emblem and complex anti-counterfeiting patterns engraved on the surface. It was the reserve fund he had left for his territory. it would probably come at a considerable set. Jiang Chen's thinking was actually very simple. Jiang Chen could make a replica himself. The syndicate's attitude towards Jiang Chen has completely changed. It was as if Jiang Chen wasn't his client, but rather his boss. Now it was Daimo's turn to feel envious and jealous. They are also tenants of the Goblin Merchant Guild. They might even have their own peopleseps stationed there. They were willing to do anything to earn gold coins. He would never go to that place unless absolutely necessary. Jiang Chen listened carefully, silently memorizing every word the syndicate said. This information was of great value to him, but he always felt that the syndicate had overlooked two important forces. The Mage Association is a neutral force on the continent. Any mage, including proud elves, would be proud to graduate from the Mage Guild. The Holy Sea of Light is a powerful force within the Holy Alliance of Humanity. The power of the Holy Sea is immense. The Pope's edicts and the King's commands have almost equal authority. They have never thought about opening a shop in Avalon. The essence of politics has always been compromise and checks and balances. He already had a new plan in mind. The healing potions she creates are far more effective than ordinary potions. Ordinary people have no access to the inheritance of alchemy. This is almost a consensus on the mainland. Syndicate smiled non-committally, but did not press the matter. The source of the goods is not important to the Goblin Merchant Guild. Jiang Chen's words were like the whispers of a demon from hell. The room was small and simply furnished. Inside the clear glass bottle was a bright red potion, which swayed slightly and emitted a faint herbal scent. This price was higher than Jiang Chen had expected. The cost is within 10 universal gold coins. This is much more profitable than selling it to time travelers. The sight made the syndicate's eyes light up, and their breathing became rapid. This quantity was the result of Jiang Chen's careful consideration. He was acutely aware of the value of this high-quality drug. He might even have the opportunity to become a full-fledged manager. She has a strange temper and a stubborn personality. Strictly speaking, Jiang Chen was telling the truth. It's impossible to know exactly how old Sisca was. It's also true that she had an eccentric temperament. He had originally hoped to make a fortune with this medicine. Jiang Chen was secretly delighted, but his face still showed a troubled expression. She would tug at Jiang Chen's clothes from time to time. Jiang Chen smiled helplessly and casually bought her a small pendant inlaid with colorful gemstones. Luo Jia immediately smiled happily, her eyebrows curving like a child who had received candy. Jiang Chen was surprised to find Luo Jia so girlish and found it rather amusing. After a slight dizziness, Jiang Chen returned to his loyal territory. The heroes in the territory all had their own things to do. The only person who came to greet Jiang Chen was the skeleton hero Vega. He saw Jiang Chen emerge from the teleportation array, bowed slightly, and said respectfully, "Master, the territory would generally not have any major problems." He patted Roja on the shoulder and said. Luo Jia nodded, and immediately ran towards the training ground. He found the place had chosen long ago to build the hero's altar. This was the building he had ever seen. He had accumulated enough basic materials such as stone, wood, and bricks. There were no strict restrictions on what type of gold coins were required. What pained him the most was the core of the hero altar. The syndicate had recommended it when he bought the hero altar blueprint. They even know that a hero altar has been built in their territory. The outline of the building gradually became clear. The splicing of each stone and the construction of each pillar were precise and flawless. The hero altar shone with a dazzling golden light the moment it was fully completed. Jiang Chen stood before the hero altar. He had no intention of being taken advantage of. The light from the altar was almost blinding. The golden patterns became more intricate and exquisite. Jiang Chen is now completely unconcerned about these million-plus points. Jiang Chen looked at the contents of the Lord's book. A satisfied smile finally appeared on his face. 400 binding slots are more than enough. Luo Jia had run over at some point. Jiang Chen raised an eyebrow at her expression. However, Luo Jia is actually not suited to using this kind of coquettish attitude at all. She had always been unruly and aloof. Luo Jia knew all too well how precious the slots for the hero altar were. In the orc tribe, those who are qualified to use the hero altar are extremely rare. Jiang Chen said in a strange tone. Luo Jia was stunned for a moment, and the smile on her face instantly froze. Luo Jia immediately looked like a wilted eggplant. Jiang Chen is undoubtedly the core of the territory, and will definitely occupy a spot. So, all 4 spots were taken by them, leaving none for her. Jiang Chen sometimes felt helpless about Luo Jia. Jiang Chen's entire territory would be filled with skeleton soldiers and dark creatures. As soon as the system notification sound ended, Luo Jia could no longer contain her excitement. It's obvious, because even their loyalty has increased. It was clear that Luo Jia didn't have much experience with kissing. It was more like a gentle bite. The hero altar is not 100% reliable. The hero altar is merely a safety net. Even if many heroes sign a contract, their loyalty is generally not high. They are likely to not put in their best effort. Therefore, a hero's loyalty is far more important than the contract itself. She is still very loyal at heart. The relationship between heroes and lords is inherently one of mutual support and mutual achievement. Even if a hero contract is signed, this relationship will not change. Luo Jia seemed to have made a huge decision. Jiang Chen was completely different from the human nobles she had imagined. He didn't have that arrogant look-down-on-people attitude. The only requirement was that his orders be carried out without fail on the battlefield. Jiang Chen was especially devoted to Amy. She was bought by him from slave traders. She knew that alchemists were extraordinary figures. Many nobles would greet them with smiles, go to great lengths to invite an alchemist. The amount called out for every transaction was so huge that she doubted her hearing. A seemingly ordinary bottle of alchemical potion was sold for an outrageously high price. Luo Jia knew how terrifying Sisca's production was. Luo Jia could tell just how powerful the alchemy of that somewhat frightening-looking doll was. Sisca's. This was undoubtedly a tremendous stroke of luck for Amy. Jiang Chen has established a hero's altar in the territory. Luo Jia's level is slightly higher than that of Gevak. Her strength is not much worse than Guok's. Even her sister was captured and enslaved. She might be of great use in the future. Luo Jia's words were full of vulgarity and malice. He looked at the cat man in front of him. In his view, money is indeed not that hard to earn. He had already made up his mind to accept them. She was afraid that Jiang Chen would change his mind. He could easily support dozens or even hundreds of people. A lesson he had learned from his previous life. The human nobles she had met at the border were all selfish. He must ensure that everyone around him is an absolutely trustworthy confidant. Luo Jia fell silent, then lowered her head and thought for a moment. She knew Jiang Chen was telling the truth. Jiang Chen looked at her and nodded slightly. This level of loyalty is practically unwavering. Luo Jia would generally not betray him. His loyalty was second only to Sisca. Sisca and Grous were still tinkering around in their own territory. His true form is Jiang Chen's summoned creature. His innate loyalty is a perfect 100 points. She could sense that the Lord was a good person. Her sister's improved mood perhaps meant that their future would be brighter. The Cursed Cave is located in a desolate valley between Jiang Chen's territory and Blackrock's Satrat City, a place that is very famous in the northern region. The reason it is famous is not because it hides any treasures. No one who has entered the cave has ever come out alive. It has become known as the Cursed Cave, and no one dares to approach it easily. Luo Jia seemed very interested in this adventure full of unknowns and dangers. Before long, a gloomy and terrifying cave appeared before everyone's eyes. Around the cave entrance, there were some broken weapons and bones scattered around. Some of the bones had weathered away. Without Wei Jia's reminder, Jiang Chen had already sensed it himself. The aura of death was so thick it was almost impenetrable. Jiang Chen is no longer the naive newcomer he was when he first transmigrated. Such a dense concentration of death energy is definitely unusual. There must be something strange about this place. The least affected are the spirits of the dead themselves. Two perspectives instantly appeared in Jiang Chen's mind. The air was filled with a pungent smell. The ground underfoot was sticky and slippery, but they seemed oblivious, still charging fearlessly at the skeleton soldiers. The orc corpses inside the cave seemed endless. There was no impact on morale, no fear, and no retreat. Once they reached open ground, the skeleton's advantages became immediately apparent. Once they reached open areas, the orc corpses were systematically beaten down by the skeleton soldiers. Some were responsible for dragging away the slain orc corpses. The skeleton archers were responsible for cleaning up the remaining corpses. The corpse's body was instantly cleaved into two, his gaze fixed on the cursed cave, from which rotting corpses were constantly emerging. No wonder this cave has never been fully explored over the years. These rotting corpses are probably the remains of orc adventurers who entered the cave before. It was corrupted by the dark energy inside and turned into its current form. He is skilled in dark and fire magic. Perhaps he could clear out the island's rotting corpses very quickly. A large number of dark priests and elite gargoyles were summoned to the arena. As the command was given, the dark priest slowly stepped forward, chanting obscure incantations. The rotting corpses before them would have no chance of stopping the undead army's advance, no longer possessing the continuous momentum they had before. A sharp glint flashed in Jiang Chen's eyes, and he immediately ordered, "Charge in!" Jiang Chen currently doesn't have a combat type hero specifically for leading the charge. He can only temporarily have Vega fill in. The scattered corpses could not stop their advance at all and were quickly cleared away. The depths of the cave were filled with light. The surrounding walls were inlaid with countless fist-sized luminous stones. The illuminating stones are all carefully polished into round shapes. Jiang Chen felt that this was not a gloomy. On both sides of the staircase were carved ferocious skulls, patterns exuding a faint, dark aura. The loss would be far too great for him. Even more terrifying is its cursed body skill. The hard skull was corroded into a pile of dry bones. It was corroded by the cursed energy. The elite skeleton soldier was also tainted by the cursed mist. He was completely reduced to a skeleton. She turned to look at Jiang Chen with disbelief. This is a purple-tier 6th level vengeful spirit, capable of instantly killing elite skeleton soldiers. Jiang Chen was already her and her sister's long-term meal ticket. She absolutely could not let him die here. The necromantic energy dissipating in the cave seemed to be strongly attracted. The already dazzling golden light became even more radiant. The power of death is so weak that it is almost non-existent. The skeleton soldiers besieging the vengeful spirit had already lost more than 200. The ground was littered with broken bones and decaying skeletons. The scene was extremely gruesome. However, it only had a few minor cracks in its bones and was not seriously injured. Jiang Chen's expression grew increasingly serious as he watched the vengeful spirit's terrifying destructive power. This is the single target attack spell, with the highest damage to the soul in necromancy. Half of Jiang Chen's magic power was instantly drained, leaving him feeling empty. Jiang Chen seemed to hear a crisp sound of glass shattering. The moment these dissipating curse auras appeared, they were completely absorbed by the golden coffin beside them. It is naturally targeted relentlessly by the death finger. The lost magic began to slowly recover. Luo Jia was the first to rush out. Luo Jia didn't care whether the skeleton on the ground was completely dead or not. She found nothing but a pile of scattered black bones. Luo Jia was somewhat unwilling to give up, so she searched carefully again, but still found nothing. Luo Jia was somewhat unwilling to give up. In the center of that pile of bones was a black crystal, the size of a fist. Jiang Chen then ordered the skeleton soldier to take the soul crystal. Jiang Chen even had the skeleton soldiers collect the pile of broken black bones. This kind of hard bone might be used to make weapons or armor in the future. Most of them were dropped by the corpses of thousands of orcs. The throne's surface was as smooth as a mirror. He even began to wonder just how many secret treasures the undead race had lost. He had only been in this world for less than half a month. Jiang Chen suspected that the necromancer race might have experienced some great upheaval in ancient times. The current Desert Orthodox is likely just a branch of the ancient undead forces. Luo Jia also walked up the steps. The golden props were all clan treasures, and Jiang Chen had no intention of ignoring them. It was firmly suppressed by the dark gold-grade golden coffin. The speed at which the gold tube gathers death energy has also increased significantly. This made Jiang Chen wonder if these two treasures were originally one. The chilling stillness that had permeated the cave gradually faded as the energy dissipated. This place has completely become an ordinary cave. He raised his hand, opened the Book of Lords, and turned to the main city page. He had obtained a large amount of ashstone and death gems from the cursed cave. The main city is the core of the territory, and the higher its level, the better. Lord's Hall is upgrading. 59 minutes and 59 seconds remaining. Jiang Chen raised an eyebrow slightly as he watched the countdown tick away. However, he can afford to wait. And besides, he has more important things to do now. These two seem to always have endless topics to talk about. They have a very good impression of each other. Even the undead were just a bunch of skeletons, and true eternity still depended on her. Both were highly knowledgeable, and had lived for countless years. They were able to broaden each other's horizons, and make up for their own shortcomings. Sisca merely raised her eyelids, glanced at Jiang Chen, and immediately composed herself, sitting there steadily. The towering Lich patiently explained as he walked. The Temple of the Dead has been strengthened. Jiang Chen was overjoyed. He hadn't realized there was such a good thing. Upgrading each type of building twice is more than enough. There are no extra soul coffins available. As they spoke, the two entered the Temple of the Dead. Jiang Chen's gaze swept over the miniature models, and he had already made up his mind. They are not as practical as combat units, like gargoyles and dark priests. They are not needed for the time being. Of the 3 orange-tier troop buildings, Jiang Chen was the first to abandon the Grave Mound. The Grave Mound summons skeletons, and now higher-level skeletons are of little help to him. They have an absolute advantage in numbers. The attributes of these 2 soul coffins are practically tailor-made for gargoyles. He walked up to the miniature model of the Stone Wing Church. As the incantation was chanted, the 2 soul coffins gradually glowed with a faint light. The summoned gargoyles will be greatly enhanced in strength and agility. Jiang Chen stood in front of the Stone Wing Church. The recruitment price has not changed at all. The main selling point is to maximize cost-effectiveness. The undead faction is as powerful as ever. The Stone Wing Church was filled with light. Jiang Chen raised his hand and opened the Necronomicon. The quantity has also been adjusted to 300. The enhanced elite gargoyles continued to take to the air. Jiang Chen turned around and looked at Grous. The Shadow Throne and the Golden Coffin appeared in front of the 2 of them. An expression of disbelief appeared on his face. Lich Grous's loyalty has increased by 5 points, currently at 90%. He has a natural awe and desire for the treasures of the undead race. It's only 10 points away from reaching the maximum value. This is really disrespectful. He may have the possibility of mass-producing undead heroes in the future. Heroes are the core fighting force of a Titeri. Sisca, standing to the side, clearly had little interest in matters related to the soul. She wasn't interested in how Jiang Chen would handle the crystal. Since Grous had said so, Jiang Chen nodded in agreement. Jiang Chen was quite confident in his ability to deceive people. It would be a simple matter to increase the loyalty of this ghost hero. As for the side effects of the Shadow Throne, Jiang Chen was not worried at all. The Golden Coffin has now been upgraded to the Dark Gold level. The curse of the Shadow Throne is therefore out of the question. After Grous left, only Jiang Chen and Sisca remained on the field. It would be a shame to lose it. Remember, it must be a complete body with flesh and bones. Jiang Chen was speechless after being retorted by Sisca, and looked somewhat embarrassed. He was born a ruthless swindler, and was unwilling to waste such a high-quality purple skeleton. It would require a lot of rare materials. The modified puppet would only be upgraded by 1 level at most. During this time, the territory's defenses must be strengthened. It would be even better if there were more daring apprentices. The items inside the treasure chest were neatly arranged. Jiang Chen's gaze was first drawn to the 2 top-tier props. It was slightly cool to the touch. The bow was made of some kind of unknown wood. The damage is increased by an additional 20%. The arrows will have a slight moonlight burning effect. It has an additional effect against dark creatures. This Goddess hunting bow only has the damage of a level 5 orange item. The 10-kilometer detection range is enough to cover most battlefield environments. This is simply the ultimate weapon for killing to silence witnesses and for tracking down enemies. Stasensi. The overwhelming attack was so powerful that even an orange-tier hero would perish on the spot. Without the slightest hesitation, Jiang Chen decided to keep the Moon Goddess hunting full for himself. Jiang Chen felt a faint energy envelop him. The wearer's movement speed is increased by 10%. No footprints or aura traces will be left behind. The various factions are hostile to each other. Jiang Chen's mind was filled with a wealth of knowledge and insights about spatial teleportation. Jiang Chen immediately opened his attribute panel to check the newly acquired skill. Spatial teleportation is a type of spatial magic. However, the technology used by the Goblin Merchants Guild is more advanced. It would probably drain his magic power. They are not very useful to him at the moment. The wood processing plant is a functional building. The industrial zone was already taking shape. Jiang Chen walked to an open area and opened the Book of Lords. The ground around him began to tremble slightly. In just a short time, a wood processing plant was completed. This stuff has no shortage of market on the mainland. Jiang Chen pushed open the door and walked in. As Sisca's alchemy apprentice, Amy was already waiting at the door. She was wearing a white apprentice robe and had a slightly tired smile on her face. She was thoroughly tormented by Sisca during this period. The teacher seemed to have forgotten that he was just an ordinary orc. Jiang Chen nodded and followed Amy deeper into the laboratory. The two arrived at a spacious secret room. To Jiang Chen's surprise, A huge bathtub was placed in the center of the secret room. But now it seems that things are not as expected. Jiang Chen then noticed that the bathtub was filled with a blue solution. Jiang Chen's expression instantly turned somewhat unpleasant. This was the only thought in Jiang Chen's mind at that moment. Her tone as indifferent as if she were talking about something trivial. He strongly suspected that Sisca was doing it on purpose. The effect of external application of the recovery potion is not as good as internal administration. He might have a heart attack and die on spot. It was perfectly normal for maids to help their masters bathe and change clothes. Jiang Chen quickly closed his eyes, concentrated, and began to continuously use the skeleton summoning skill. A faint black magic appeared at his fingertips as he silently chanted a summoning incantation. A faint layer of black mist would rise from the ground. His magic power was constantly being depleted. But Jiang Chen's eyes remained bright, and there was even a faint smile on his lips. The process of repeatedly depleting his magic power and then replenishing it was like forging steel. Luo Jia was woken up by the hunger in her stomach. Usually, Amy would have come to wake her up by this time. The Lord's fortress was eerily quiet. There wasn't a soul in sight. She must be in the alchemy lab. Luo Jia walked quickly to the door of the alchemy laboratory and pushed it open. A huge wooden barrel was filled with a pale blue liquid. There were only 2 female creatures in the territory, her and Amy. Jiang Chen was tormented like a dead dog. She, however, was completely unharmed and was able to serve him peacefully on the sidelines. Luo Jia stood with her hands on her hips. She was just pretending to be innocent. To see Luo Jia get furious. At this moment, the water in the bathtub had become much dimmer. The bottom of the tub was now clearly visible. The remaining medicinal properties has also become much weaker. Jiang Chen looked at the bathwater in the tub. She didn't care at all who the unlucky one would be. At the same time, Amy also gained a deeper understanding of her owner's stingy nature. Watching Amy's busy figure, Jiang Chen smiled. He had already decided that he would sell these bathwaters. The remaining potency was enough to fake a not very effective Tier 1 recovery potion. As for whether this is his bathwater, that's completely unimportant. It can only be said that Sisca's alchemy skills are truly ingenious. He would not have been able to come up with such an idea. After a night of hard work, Jiang Chen had summoned an army of nearly 100,000 skeletons. This is exactly the kind of terrifying scene that only appears in the legendary hell. At the laboratory entrance, Vega was already waiting respectfully. The click-clack sound was deafening, and the ground trembled slightly. Jiang Chen looked down at the boundless sea of bones below. Jiang Chen had always been curious about the northern region of the territory. The 2 locations he explored earlier, rich in necromantic energy, had already made him a fortune. He not only obtained a large amount of undead summoning materials. Luo Jia nodded immediately, a smile of excitement on her face. Jiang Chen and Luo Jia stopped and turned to look. Beside him was a petite, black-haired girl. The girl was dressed in a black outfit, with long hair that reached her waist. Her skin was so white, it was almost transparent. It is immune to all physical damage and can freely pass through physical obstacles. He might have been defeated even when facing evil spirits. The initial loyalty level is already 80, which is quite high. Grous had already seen through Jiang Chen's doubts. She is essentially still like a newborn baby. Thanks to Grous's prior introduction, Avril already knew that the man before her was the one she was about to serve. Only in the most desperate and hopeless situations would one make such a decision that betrays one's own race. He had already vaguely learned about Avril's past identity from the previous description of the tainted soul crystal. Afterwards, Jiang Chen took Avril to the hero altar and had her bind to the altar. He took Avril, Luo Jia, and the guards who had been prepared, and set off for the human city. Jiang Chen originally planned to have Avril sit on the cart with him and Luo Jia. Jiang Chen nodded in agreement and did not refuse. For Avril, who possesses a half-ghostly nature, shadows and darkness are her true domain. Her stealth is also at its best. The master assassin is also an excellent bodyguard. Her activities were limited to the lower-class areas, and she did not know much information. Most of them are anecdotes among the lower classes or trivial matters. Jiang Chen had already led everyone out of the terrifying. Scattered green grass has begun to appear on the ground. It has already shaken off the scene of barren land covered by ice and snow. It has not yet reached the area that can truly be called a land of life. Just then, Jiang Chen frowned suddenly, and his expression instantly became serious. The gargoyles suddenly sent a signal, indicating that there was a situation ahead. A small-scale battle was taking place on a forest path not far away. It was not a conflict between orcs and grey dwarves common in the far north. They were besieging a convoy guarded by knights dressed in black armor. The carriage was pulled by 2 fine horses. It was evident that the person inside was of very high status. It didn't matter if he was injured. The leader of the group was a handsome man. He had a fierce look in his eyes. He looked at the knights, who were still putting up a stubborn resistance. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and waved it. They've now entered a state of conflict. They fought to the very last moment. Jiang Chen watched Luo Jia rush out in a flurry. This guy is really thick-skinned, just leaving the mage behind without any guards. But they had no idea how terrible the visitors were. He was about to scold his men for making a fuss. Gargoyles are flying units unique to the undead and vampires. They are incredibly fast, immune to low-level magic, and extremely aggressive. High-tier gargoyles are second only to bone dragons in the undead's aerial combat ranks. This is the border area of the Holy Alliance. Within sight of the naked eye, there were more than 100 high-ranking gargoyles. He had never seen such a large number of high-level gargoyles before. Even in previous small-scale battles against the undead, he had never seen such a massive formation. His fingers gripping the longsword turned slightly white. Their operation, this time, is likely to fail completely, and they may even be wiped out. They could receive generous rewards and also make contributions to the Holy See. The sheer number and power of these gargoyles had exceeded his ability to handle them. Just as the enhanced gargoyle was about to pounce, Doki deftly slid forward. This scene should have been extremely inspiring to the troops. These gargoyles were incredibly hard, as if they were being chopped into a rock. This is just one of the gargoyles. But Jiang Chen would never give these people a chance to retreat. The guy who led this was actually a hero. No wonder he could easily kill his enhanced gargoyle. He turned to look at Luo Jia.